Before you blow another rent-to-rent viewing, stop. You see, the fact is, most rent-to-rent deals are won or lost at the viewing stage. Most of you are so hungry to secure yourself a rent-to-rent deal that you neglect the importance of negotiating at the viewing, and the fact is, you couldn't close a piece of chicken and Nando's. In this video, I'm going to break down the exact strategy from the moment you step in the property to the moment you are closing the deal. And the best part is, this is the exact formula that allowed me to do 20 deals in my first year, secure 1 in every 2 properties that I view, not 1, but 2. And for rookie rent-to-renters just starting out with me, they can actually close 1 in every 10, and that number comes down until you become a top G like me. So if you've been going to viewings, getting no after no, and you're thinking about quitting, get your head up, get your notepad, and let's get into it. Newsflash, okay? The purpose of the viewing is to get a deal. And if you do the viewing perfectly, at the end of the viewing, you should have a deal in principle. By the way, if you want to learn how to get viewings in the first place, go ahead and download my rent-to-rent course script in the description. It will show you how to get to this part. But in terms of viewings, most of you make the fatal error. You go to the property, you have a look around, and then at the end of the viewing, you say, okay, Mr. or Mrs. Landlord, I'll be in touch, and you leave. Do not do this. I know it's counterintuitive, but if you actually commit to the property and get a pre-agreement at the viewing, I guarantee your close rate, your conversion rate, the number of rent-to-rent deals you secure will go through the roof. So let's start with the end in mind. How do you do that? Well, check this out. The first thing we need to do is you need my RTO formula. This is going to unlock everything. So check this out. It works like this. Rent plus term, okay? In other words, the rent you're going to pay to the landlord and the length of the agreement with the landlord divided by any objections is going to always, in every situation, every single time I've done a viewing, I've helped people, I've coached people on viewings, rent plus term divided by objections equals that elusive rent-to-rent deal. So what does that mean? That means that anytime you are a viewing, you want to be trying to provisionally agree on the rent, provisionally agree on the length of the agreement, and key thing here, you want to make sure that you uncover as many of the landlord's objections as possible on the viewing. Now, I'm going to give you the exact script. This is how this goes. At the end of the viewing, most of you are going to leave and say, well, I'll be in touch. Don't do that. At the end of the viewing, here's what you want to do. Hey, John, thank you so much for showing me around. I love the property. I'd like to move forward. In other words, every time you start the RTO formula, what you want to do is it always starts with a yes. Okay? In other words, you want to say, John, listen, love the property. We'd like to move forward. What did you say the rent was again? Okay? And I know what you're thinking. Well, Simon, I know the rent because I've seen it on the ad. But here is the thing. Most people, whether it's landlords, agents, they will set a market rent, the asking rent, but that isn't governed, okay? That isn't always correct. Sometimes they'll go higher. It's a game of bargaining. Imagine this, you're doing a car boot, you got a lovely pair of jeans, Levi's classics, you've not worn them for 10 years. In fact, your fat ass doesn't fit in it anymore, right? And you put a little sticker on these jeans that says 15 quid. Nobody's gonna pay you 15 quid for it. You know you'd be happy with 12 quid. So what happens is I come up to your lovely store and I say, 15 quid are they? And you say, yeah. And I end up paying the 15 quid or I have to barter, all right? However, if I say to you, hey, love those jeans, what's the best price? What's the best price we can do on them? You might just say, I could do 12 quid, all right? So the label price isn't always the price. That is why we say yes, and then we always ask the landlord, what did you say the rent was again? And the landlord's gonna come back to you and say, hey, check it out. Do you know what the rent is? I advertised it at 2,200, but to tell you the truth, Simon, I would actually accept 2,100. So we've already knocked down 100 quid. Well done. You've saved 100 quid, 1,200 quid a year, 5-year agreement. I just saved you 6 grand. All right. If you like this, hit the subscribe button, obviously, right? So once you've got that, then what you want to do is say, and if I was to guarantee your rent for say 5 years, John, would there be any movement in the rent? And John might say, well, how long are you thinking? And you're going to say, well, you know, we could maybe start with 3 years, or ideally we could do 5 years. Would there be any movement on that rent, John? And John's going to say, well, maybe I could do 2,000. So guess what? I just saved you another 100 quid because now we're only going to pay £2,000. But what's best, this is the best part about this, right? If they are standing tall, they're standing strong, they need the full 2,100, they're also going to tell you that. So rather than you going away, doing your figures and offering 1,900, you know that the landlord needs 2,100. So now your challenge is, can I make that work? Really, really key game changer. In fact, I speak to hundreds of people in my community now, and as soon as we start actually doing this process, they're closing 1 in every 5, 1 in every 3, 1 in every 8 viewings, and they just get deals, and they get deals fast. Okay, so agree on the rent, agree on the term. Then what you want to do is we want to allow the objections to come out. So what exactly is an objection? An objection is a reason, a fear, a doubt, some uncertainty. It's that they need to speak to their spouse. It's that they want to do their due diligence about you because you set up your limited company yesterday. It's all of those fears that could kill the deal. Now, most of you do not actually go for no, or so they say. You do not find out the objections, and as a result, they ghost you, they don't respond, they kind of don't get back to you for 5 days, and then they decide to go with a family. Whatever it is, you need to make sure you uncover these. So what I typically recommend is once you've agreed on the rent and the term, say, hey, so this is a pre-agreement. Hey, John, so hypothetically speaking, if I was to offer you the £2,000 for 5 years, in principle, would you be happy to move forward and give us access to the property so we can set it up for our clients? And you're going to get one of 2 answers. Yes, which means, you know, you're good, or a bit of hesitation. They're going to be like, well, I still need to just run it by the partner. And you'll say, no problem. But now what happens is you can now handle that objection. You can now say, okay, what's your partner's name? Amy. Okay, well, tell me about Amy. Like, do you guys own it together? You know, what does Amy think to it? You mentioned that you were always down here doing maintenance issues and having late night calls with tenants. What does Amy think to that? So you can start handling that objection. You could say, listen, you know, just cards on the table. Just level with me. You know, is this a joint decision that you would need to make with Amy, or do you have the authority to push go on this? All right. Can you see how I'm driving this deal, guys? I'm driving the deal. This is a sales conversation now. And I'm going to say, listen, you know, do we need Amy? And they're going to say yes. I say, well, how about this? Listen, I'm in the area tomorrow. How about we pick up a coffee? Me, you, and Amy can have a conversation, go through finer details. I can bring an example of the terms. I can bring some more information. And then at that coffee, if it feels good, then we can move forward. Sound good? That's what you do. Or, hey, listen, do you think it'd be worth jumping on a Zoom this evening with Amy and we can go through it so she can hear it from the horse's mouth? Really, really key. So we agree on the rent. We agree on the term. We get the pre-agreement. We handle the objections. And then that is how you're going to get the deal. So let's take a breath. How do we get to this offer? How do we get to the point where we've provisionally got a yes with the landlord? Well, there are 5 key pillars, 5 key criteria to the perfect rent-to-rent viewing. The first thing, which is the foundations, all right? If you haven't got this, nothing else I show you on this video will matter. The first thing we need to do is we need to build massive rapport. Now, I know what you're thinking. Simon, this sounds a bit airy-fairy, yada, 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 whatever. But the fact is this: people work with who they know, like, and trust. If you do not connect with a landlord, they won't want to work with you. I mean, I've had landlords that I've got into business with, okay, we've entered into agreement, and I've regretted it. I thought, this landlord and I do not get along. All right, they live a few doors down. They want to still manage the gardening. They insist on introducing themselves to the properties. I'm pulling my hair out. Or equally, I've had landlords that are really unreasonable when it comes to the maintenance requirements and all that stuff. So you want to build rapport here, and you want to get a feel for, is this someone that you want to have a relationship with for the next 5 years, at least 5 years. The second foundation, the second pillar of the perfect property viewing is, of course, at some point, guys, we've got to actually focus on the property. P for property. Now, what does that mean? That means that there's a few different things that we want to achieve on the viewing in terms of the property. First things first, we want to make sure that the property is in good condition, okay? Really, really easy to do, guys, okay? Are the carpets nice? Are the walls nice? Is the bathroom, the kitchen, the fresh? If it's a new build, happy days. Now, listen, top tip here. I've had properties where the walls haven't been great, where the carpets haven't been amazing, but I've managed to add value. That is a key sort of thing with property investment. If you can add value, you're going to make money. Plus, the landlord's going to be particularly motivated. So don't be too strict here. Think about your target guest, your target tenant, and think about what you could do to add value, keeping the budget down. So the first thing to do is you want to look at the condition of the property. The next thing we want to do here is we want to establish the works the landlord is planning to do. Big mistake I see so many of you doing is leading with the free cosmetic refurb, and then the landlord's expecting you to do all of this work to the property that they would need to do whether they were with you or not. So a great way around is to say, hey, listen, Jen, what works do you need to do to the property before it be ready for your tenants? And she's going to say, well, I'm going to replace that carpet. I'm going to paint that room. We need to clear up the garden, and it's good. A lot of landlords will say nothing. I'm like, mate, there's a hole in the wall. What do you mean nothing? That can happen. But we want to ask them what works they need to do to the property. And then what I really like to do here is I want to really get a flavor for the history of them and the property. How long have they owned it? Okay. What are their usual tenants? Do they manage the property themselves? Do they use an agent? If not, why? Okay, what are their long-term plans for the property? So history is absolutely key because it's going to give you the context so you can move on to the next pillar. The third pillar is one of the most important. In fact, I would say it is the most important. And the reason is, if you get this part correct, this will be the part that will allow you to make the correct offer. So what we want to do is we want to make sure we now find out the landlord's motivations. Now, I used to call this pain, okay? I used to call this pain points, but the fact of the matter is not all landlords will have a pain point, okay? So I now like to refer to it as motivators, motivations, whichever one. Now, the key thing is this. Not every landlord will be desperate to rent their property. They may not have a mortgage. Not every landlord will be desperate to find a tenant. However, they will all have a key thing that motivates them. It could be money. It could be not doing any work. It could be somebody they trust. It could be somebody that's going to respect the neighbors because they used to live at the property and they've known these neighbors for 20 years. If you find the landlord's motivator, and then when you come to the offer stage, you appeal to that motivation, you're going to have a good deal. All right. And that is just basic sales. Like, think about it, everybody. Think about it. If you want to buy a product, let's say, for example, you want to buy a car. And the main reason you want to buy a car is because you want comfort so you can fit the whole family in there. You've got 2 kids, you need 2 baby seats, you need, something on the, good roof space, something on the top so you can carry your bikes and all that good stuff for trips. Okay. And then you go in the car garage and they start talking about the speed of the car. all right? You're going to be like, well, to be honest with you, I'm more motivated by the space, all right? So what you need to do is you need to do a proper fact find before you make the offer. Let me give you an example. If you establish the landlord has owned the property for 10 years, all right? They have now got health issues, so they're unable to do the maintenance, and they're just sick to death of having to handle the property and the tenants. All they want to do is they want somebody to take the property, pay them rent every month, and they don't want to hear about it. What do you think we're now going to sell when we move to the offer? We're now going to sell a long-term agreement, hands off, them not needing to do any work. But what that also means is they may not be as concerned about the money. So we now might be able to get a discount for that motivation that they want. So, third pillar, motivations. Lock them down. Let me just give you some more value, right? How do I find out their motivations? Well, ask them more open questions. What's important to you in a tenant? Okay, you've owned it for 10 years. How's that been? In terms of the maintenance, who does it? Oh, you do it. Do you enjoy it? What's the worst thing about being a landlord? Okay, really start to dig into that and then let them share. Beautiful thing about this is when you're asking the questions, you're controlling the conversation, and what that means is it takes the heat off you, all right? So really not only effective strategy, but it also takes the heat off you. So if you're a bit nervous, don't worry, ask the questions. The fourth pillar, things are starting to get a bit spicy now, because what we're going to do is we are going to create our offer. And we know what the offer is because we covered that earlier, all right? We know we need to do the rent, the term, and then we need to handle the objections. So make sure that at the end of the viewing, you say, listen, James, love the property. I think it's perfect for our clients. I'd like to move forward, okay? Say yes, agree on the rent, and agree on the term. And last but not least, it is the final O, okay? The objections. What objections does the landlord have? Top tip here. What I like to do is I like to agree on the rent and the term, do a pre-agreement. And then I say, you know what, John, do you mind if I quickly take a video of the property for my clients? Back in a few minutes. Go around the property, go take a video. Guys, please make sure you take it landscape. You'll thank me later when you watch the video back, because if you're anything like me, you're viewing so many properties, you'll forget which one's which. So you'll refer back to the video so you can plan the refurb and really know the property. Then once you've completed the video viewing, go back and say, brilliant, so I'll get the offer in writing to you this afternoon. Before I go, is there anything you're not 100% comfortable with or happy with? So what that does is that allows them to ask any other questions or other objections. It allows you to handle them, go back to a pre-agreement that they're going to move forward. And that, my friends, if you do all of that correctly, that is going to ultimately result in a deal. Well done. Listen. None of what I've just shared with you will matter if you do not get these final three basic things on point. Because the fact of the matter is, all right, viewings, landlords, relationships are about the technicalities, sure. But when it comes down to it, you've got to get these three simple things on point. And I want to share them with you right now. So here is the three key things. The first thing, you need to make sure you are always on point. Okay, what do I mean by on point? I mean you're on time. I mean you're looking presentable, all right? You're smelling fresh. You didn't just get off a bus smelling, stinking, sweating all over the landlord's brand new carpets. Okay, so just make it sound simple, but you'll be surprised. I remember actually when I started, I used to wear a bit of a suit. Talk about it in the book. I'll never forget it. I used to wear like a bit of a suit and look like a letting agent. I had my shoes on, so I won't repeat what I used to call them or what Lucy used to call them. And I used to rock up with a bit of a briefcase where I had my contracts, I had some brochures, I had a note. I used to take notes. And I was going there in a presentable way that made sense. So make sure you are on point, all right? Second key thing here is you got to make sure, guys, your energy is on point. Okay? You'll be surprised how many people I speak to and their energy is off center. You know, maybe they've just been to work and they've had a heavy day. Maybe they've had 10 no's and now they're just a bit nervous and their energy is off. You feel nervous. You're rubbing your face. You're looking down. You're nervous. Like, people can smell that. And that is not the characteristic that you are going to want to trust in with the biggest asset. Now, listen, in terms of energy, I've got to break it to you. All right, I'm just going to keep it 100% real. If you master everything I've described, sometimes your first viewing will be a deal. But I have people that I've worked with, 10, 20, 30 viewings, still no deal. And their energy does dip. And, you know, sometimes I have to coach them. I have to say, listen, and I'll coach you right now. How bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? If you really want it, you've got to make sure you're turning up on point and your energy is always that you're going to close this deal. You are going to secure this property. So make sure energy is on point. And last but not least, and it is possibly the most key, I see so many of you rolling into viewings and quite frankly blagging it. You need to make sure that you are razor sharp. You've got to know your stuff, all right? You've got to know your stuff. You know the area, you know the process, you know the contracts. You might want to bring a contract. You know your business model, you know the terms, you know the rents, you know the nightly rates, you know this stuff inside out so that you can focus on delivering it. So top tip here, practice this with your spouse, okay? Practice this with a friend, going through everything I've described. Role playing this stuff, and once you've got it tight, you can literally walk into this, make sure you're on point, your energy's right, and you are feeling sharp. So now you know how to do the perfect viewing. Check out this video, which is going to help you find the leads in the first place, the properties, the landlords, the agents that you can close.